Big Zay.
Morning, Brad.
Morning, boys. What's going on?
Well, you were up there, Brad. You witnessed it. You know what the stories are. You're covering the draft. Did you learn anything from what the Bears hierarchy had to say yesterday? Kind of very close proximity to the draft. I don't think you're going to get a lot of stuff, but what a relief to at least get Ian Cunningham checking in.
Yeah, no, they didn't say a whole heck of a lot, but that's all right. You don't really expect them to, and the reality is we're going to need 2 or 3 years to see how they did, like to evaluate the draft, right? If you go back and you take a look at the first draft by Ryan Poles a couple years ago, I mean, we can make some conclusions on some of those picks. And some of them, I think you really got to wait until year 3 to weigh in on how this draft class performed. And I'm looking at Javon Dexter, who we've talked endlessly about the capability and a step forward. Tyreek Stevenson. So it takes a while. You'll probably have some people assessing success or failure by Friday night, Saturday at the latest. We're going to have to see them play football, and this is a great opportunity for them to get better. They're the only team in the league with 3 picks in the top 50, and those 3 actually come in the top 41. Now, there's a good collection of teams with 5 picks in the top 100, just less than 100, or you go to about 105, 107 picks. So there's some other teams with a ton of draft capital as well. But with the Bears positioned at 10 and then 2 picks in the top third of round 2, they're a really good spot to get some help.
Well, Brad, your prose reads like Ben Johnson's poetry. So when you are waxing poetic Thursday night, do you feel like you'll be writing about a team that holds onto its pick or more likely trades down and accumulates another asset to draft later?
Yeah, a couple points. Number one, like if they trade down, you're not getting like an extra second-round pick unless you move down a long ways, right? You'd have to drop down quite a bit, but you are getting another dart to throw at the board, and if the players
Jackson dart?
if you've got a really big group of players graded at 10, sure, consider it. The other thing is who's going to want to trade up? I think there's going to be movement. I really do, and that's driven by need. Okay, when you see these moves happen, when teams are on the clock, that's generally driven by need. So we'll have to see. But I don't think they trade up.
Yeah, I hope not. Yeah,
I hope not too.
Yeah, the trading up just if the strength of this draft is into round 2, like what are you doing? Like the Bears aren't so loaded right now as a roster that they just need that one guy. They need to take a shot at a bunch of guys here, as many as they can.
It was really interesting because I think that we understand that the running back position has lost a lot of luster over the years, and yet we saw how impactful it was last year with, a couple of guys in particular with Saquon and the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. But we look at this group, and, I think it was Schefter had an item that the Bears are praying that Ashton Jeanty winds up falling to them. And I was talking to someone who said that he believes there are 6 potential blue chip running backs out of this draft, that it's not just one, that there are 6 that you would think highly of. Now, I don't know how many get drafted in the first round. It could be It could be one, it could be two, three. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities, but by his calculation, 10 of the top 100 picks in the draft are at the running back position, which is a huge number when you think about the way that running backs have been looked at. We know that the Bears are interested. We know that the head coach likes play action, and we know how well that will work. When do you think they strike at the running back position? If Jeanty falls, they could grab him. If he doesn't, does that mean the second round? Do you? Again, there are people that believe you could get a back in any round of this draft up to about the top 5.
Yeah. First of all, I don't think Jeanty falls. Jeanty's not going to fall to 10.
No, he's going to.
I just really don't think that that's plausible. It's going to depend on what you do in round 1. Do you address offensive line in round 1? Do you have a player that you can add to the mix as a left tackle? Is that truly something that you want to accomplish? Because if you take a edge rusher, a tight end, a running back, name your position other than guy that can compete at left tackle in the first round, and you truly want to add someone to the mix with Amagaji and Braxton Jones, you've got to make that move in round 2. Like that guy's, and you got to hope that guy's there at 39 or 41. So in that scenario, maybe the running back's not coming into the fold until the 3rd round. Because if you see a player that you got a better grade on, or at a position with more scarcity, because if you don't get the running back in round 2, that doesn't mean you're getting shut out of a great running back draft. There's going to be a multitude of options in round 3 when they're on the clock, and guys that in many other years probably have the talent to be drafted a decent bit higher than they're going to go, just because of the depth of all the backs this year.
Brad, there wasn't a lot offered in terms of details or specifics at Tuesday's Household Gathering, otherwise known as the Ian Cunningham Job Fair. But I do think that one of them was Darnell Wright possibly moving from the right side to the left side. And if that, you're what? I didn't even ask a question yet. What aren't you buying?
But I don't see any way Darnell Wright's going to left tackle. I don't.
So that's just something they threw out there that they're not considering?
They didn't throw it. They were asked, and they were like, well, yeah, you could. Like, it wasn't something that they threw out there. I don't view Darnell Wright as a left tackle possibility for them. Maybe I'm wrong, but
Can I ask a question, please? Does that make you disqualify Armand Membu from consideration, because he's a right tackle? And if they're going to draft him, I would be surprised if they would try him at left tackle and change positions as a rookie. Did they say he's a right tackle only? That would be my question to that. Maybe there's someone that believes he can play left tackle. I think he's a right tackle or a guard. But no, I don't think that necessarily disqualifies him. It is interesting. I was talking to one guy yesterday that I always have interesting chats with, and he said, "Can you remember a class where there's been more players that they've said, well, he's a left tackle that's got to play guard, or he's a tackle that's got to play guard, or he's a guard that's got to play center, or he's a left tackle who ultimately this guy might be best at center." Like there's not as many guys where you look at him and you say, yeah, he's a guard and he's only a guard. But I wouldn't rule Membu out, but I'm not buying Darnell Wright as a possibility at left tackle. I mean, he's got to get better at right tackle.
I am very curious, Brad. We had a conversation yesterday, and David said he felt that Kieran Amagagi was one of the most underreported, under-talked about stories out there because that guy was a third-round draft pick, and we now just sort of throw him in the mix behind the injured Braxton Jones. That he actually has like a higher lineage, if you will, than the fifth rounder Jones. Usually you take a guy who you say, well, he was injured, otherwise he'd have been a first round pick. And usually you have a plan for that guy. Now, I don't know if they have a plan or if they don't have a plan or how they feel about the injury he had when they took him. But I have literally heard nothing about Kieran Amagagi, and we do not consider him like in line for playing time or ready to make an impact in his second year. And I'm just curious, do you look at him as sort of a member of the Velus Jones club, if you will, or whatever third round pick the Bears have taken that doesn't play, whether that's Pickens or the late lamented Jones, whomever it might be. What's going to happen with him? When will we find out if he can play, and shouldn't we know that at this point?
Yeah, I think we're going to require some additional patience with the guy who really didn't have training camp last year and was so limited in terms of playing time last year. When are we going to be able to make any evaluations? Probably not until they're a little ways in a legitimate training camp with pads on, and we see him. He's a guy. If you're making a list of players right now, you're interested in seeing play in preseason, and that's generally a short list, like it's preseason. But he'd be on that list, right? How does he look? What's his body look like when he comes back here? But by no means have they written him off. They just don't have it. They got a new coaching staff with nothing to go off with them. They haven't worked with him before, and the tape that they have of him is real limited. So he can kind of define his own future here. Is how I would look at it.
Brad, how do you look at the information that's out there? I believe that the Bears haven't drafted anybody in the first or second rounds that they haven't had for a Hallis Hall visit. Does that give you any sort of guidance, or do you pay close attention to such trivia like that?
I mean, you start trying to follow something like that, and we're working off of, it's not like the regime has been around forever. I think you could wind up making a mistake if you get in the weeds with something like that. But certainly, interesting to at least discuss a little bit.
How would you rate the likelihood that they could somehow kind of switch to a defender, to a defensive lineman, to a defensive tackle, a defensive end? I'm just curious. There seem to be a lot of guys that have been mentioned, some of whom have maybe a little bit of issue off the field. Is there a cloud of players that you are keeping an eye on at those positions?
Yeah, I think they've got a clear need on the defensive line as well, especially if you're at all looking at what the Eagles do and saying, hey, this is a pretty good model here, how they build the offensive line, how they build up the defensive line, and then they just seemingly restock. Like a guy retires or a guy leaves. Well, they've got somebody in the pipeline already, and then they're adding a new player to the pipeline, so they've got additional depth. Like the Bears' pass rush was inadequate last season, and they've got, they paid pretty good money to Dio to come in and play defensive end for him, but there's a little bit of like developmental roll of the dice there with him, right? You don't know what he's going to do. So I believe there's clear need at edge, and if the right tackle's there too, they need more depth there as well. You can't look at the depth chart that they've got for Dennis Allen right now and say, hey, these guys are all set up. They need more help also.
Brad, we had Ross Tucker on yesterday, and I was surprised, actually, when he projected that the Bears would select Colston Loveland at number 10. I know Tyler Warren is a guy that might go off the board before that, but do you have an idea or any sense in talking to the number of people that you talk to how the Bears might evaluate one tight end or compare one to the other? Because they are very, obviously, highly productive players coming out of the Big Ten, but they do have different skill sets.
Yeah, they're both really good offensive players. And I actually, I think I was on this show last week, and I helped Sam Farmer, our friend with the LA Times, in the mock draft. And I told him, it got to me, and Sam gave me the 9 names that were off the board, right? And I looked at the group of names off the board. I'm like, crap, what am I going to do now? And so I thought about it, and I was like, well, heck, I'll give him Colston Loveland, because he could help him out. Mm-hmm. And he's an interesting player. In talking to people, they think Loveland's going to go higher tomorrow than some people have thought for a time now. Another name to keep an eye on is Walter Nolan, and not necessarily for the Bears. I'm just saying. Yeah. Defensive tackle at Ole Miss. He's the best pass rushing defensive tackle in this draft. And,
He's
and
young.
That's Mason Graham, for as good as he was at Michigan, he doesn't get the quarterback with the kind of regularity that would be ideal. So Nolan's a guy that could go Nolan could even go in the top 10. So those are a couple of names that haven't been getting huge run the past however many months. We beat the draft to death, but those guys should be well positioned tomorrow night, you would think.
I think Nolan's a really interesting player. He's young. He can do some things.
There's little, the little character stuff pops up for him. Yes. I think it's maturity stuff, but maybe he's late, he's this, not necessarily getting himself into trouble, but needs to get with a program that's going to help him become a little bit more mature.
Great stuff, Brad.
Thank you, Big Z.
Have a great day, guys.
That is our guy, Brad Biggs, a football man from the Chicago Tribune. A lot of possibilities out there. We'll see.
If Mason Graham drops to 10.
Yeah.
That would be a surprise, and I think it also would, depending on who else is on the board, but if he drops to 10, then some other guys that Bears might be targeting would have gone first.
Right.
And if he drops there, boy, you could live with that.
I got to tell you, I've seen, I saw a mock yesterday, I can't think of whose it was, where they had all 3 offensive linemen already drafted by 10. And I guess, there was one of the tight ends left.
It's not a terrible scenario.
Yeah.